All right, defenders, developers, and system admins, listen up. I am issuing a Code Ninja security advisory. Let's jump straight into this because we've got an incredibly alarming piece of irony on our radar today. You know those tools meticulously designed to guarantee digital trust and authenticate media? Well, specifically, Adobe's Content Authenticity Initiative SDKs, they are currently harboring a pretty dangerous zero-day. That's right, the very packages built to verify digital truth are actively leaving your file system completely defenseless. This explainer is your direct, real-time intelligence briefing on CVE 2026-34657. Now, we operate strictly on the principles of Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure, or CVD. Our objective for this briefing is absolute. We are here to arm you with the immediate mitigation strategies you need to secure your environments while simultaneously applying maximum public pressure to force an official vendor patch out of Adobe. Look, you just cannot protect the perimeter if you're blind to the holes in it. So we're going to break down the exact technical specs of this threat and give you the actionable steps you need to deploy right now before active exploitation really ramps up out there in the wild.
All right, Phase 1, the zero-day hook.
Let's orient ourselves to exactly how fast this threat is escalating. On March 30th, 2026, Adobe officially reserved the CVE identifier. Fast forward to June 9th, and boom, the vulnerability goes public on the CVE record, the GitHub advisory database, and the NVD. Within just 24 hours of that, the threat hit the Threat Radar database, and as of June 16th, we're seeing live intel updates actively enriching this threat profile. This rapid jump from a quiet reservation to live threat intelligence means that, as defenders, we have got to move just as fast.
Now, the severity rating for this vulnerability currently sits at a CVSS version 3.1 score of 5.5. Officially, that classifies it as a medium severity vulnerability. But listen to me, do not let that medium label lull you into a false sense of security here. As we dive into the actual mechanics, you're going to see why this specific flaw demands your immediate attention. It is literally a direct strike at the integrity of your underlying file system.
Moving into Phase 2, our security comms check.
In our line of work, latency is the ultimate enemy. So I need you to subscribe to @cybertech79 and enable your notifications right now. Consider this a tactical necessity, so you don't miss any real-time intel as this vulnerability evolves and as those vendor patches finally drop. Also, hit the like button on this briefing. I treat that as a formal ACK, a direct acknowledgement that this intelligence has successfully penetrated the noise and reached your perimeter defense team.
Okay, Phase 3. Let's dig into the threat blast radius.
So, what's actually happening under the hood here? The root cause is a CWE-22, which is an improper limitation of a path name to a restricted directory. In plain English, it's a classic path traversal attack. The affected Adobe product takes external input to construct a path name. That path is supposed to point to a file nested safely inside a restricted parent directory. But the software completely fails to neutralize special elements, like .. characters, within that path. Because those elements aren't sanitized, the path name escapes its sandbox and resolves to unauthorized locations completely outside of that restricted directory.
If your infrastructure relies on the Content Authenticity Initiative SDKs, you need to be scanning your NPM environments right this second. The vulnerability directly impacts the c2pa-web package for version 0.7.1 and earlier, as well as the core c2pa package for version 0.80.1 and earlier. If your CI/CD pipelines or your production builds are pulling in these versions, your systems are actively exposed. No question about it. To put this into perspective, let's contrast how this is supposed to work with the exploit reality. Normally, a user interacts with the file, the app extracts the content safely, and everything stays boxed up securely inside its restricted directory. Simple, right? But in reality, thanks to this path traversal flaw, an attacker can completely bypass those restrictions. They can execute arbitrary file system rights wherever they want. We're talking overwriting critical system files or dropping malicious payloads in directories where they have absolutely no business being.
Let's break down the CVSS base metrics to really understand the threat profile. The attack vector is local, and the attack complexity is low. And get this, privileges required is none. The attacker doesn't even need an existing foothold or a compromised account on your system to pull this off. However, user interaction is required. This isn't some automated worm spreading on its own. Exploitation relies entirely on tricking a victim into extracting a maliciously crafted file. If they do, your system's integrity is heavily impacted. That's marked as high, even though confidentiality and availability are untouched for now. Now, what is the imminence of this threat? Right now, the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, or EPSS score, is sitting at an estimated 0.024% on the GitHub Advisory Database, though live platforms like ThreatRadar have it hovering a bit higher at around 0.2%. Basically, that's the estimated probability of this thing being actively exploited in the wild over the next 30 days. It's low right now, sure, but remember, relying on obscurity is absolutely not a defense strategy. The mechanics of this exploit are public now, and you better believe threat actors are taking notes.
Which brings us to Phase 4, the mitigation protocol.
I've got to deliver the hard truth straight from our intel feeds here. As of this explainer, patch status is not yet confirmed. We are still sitting here actively awaiting official remediation and a patched package release from Adobe. And because we do not have a silver bullet patch to just push to our endpoints today, deploying an interim mitigation strategy is absolutely 100% critical to securing your environment.
So how do we defend this? Because the exploit relies entirely on that user interaction, specifically somewhat extracting a maliciously crafted file, we can neutralize the trigger by changing our behavior. I am ordering defenders to deploy the following interim defensive posture right now. Exercise extreme caution with all file extraction across your organization. Halt the extraction of unverified files immediately. Your teams have to strictly avoid processing files from untrusted sources. By locking down your file extraction protocols, you effectively remove the attacker's ability to trigger that arbitrary right.
Finally, Phase 5, ethics and sign-off.
You might be wondering why we broadcast these vulnerabilities before a patch is actually confirmed. Well, it comes down to the core ethics of coordinated vulnerability disclosure. Users need to know to protect their systems. You cannot defend against what you do not know. Radical transparency is quite literally the only viable way to protect the perimeter before active exploitation kicks off. Because you now understand the exact mechanism of CVE 2026-34657, you can implement the operational restrictions needed to keep your file systems locked down while Adobe finalizes their code.
Audit those NPM dependencies immediately, lock down your file extraction protocols, and keep your eyes glued to the threat feeds for that official vendor patch. But honestly, it leaves us with a pretty chilling question. If the very SDKs built to verify digital truth are quietly compromising our file systems, what else in our trusted software supply chain is just sitting there, waiting to be triggered? Maintain your defensive posture, guys. Stay vigilant and stay secure.